What's happening, man? So, you know this NotebookLM shit? This, like, AI shit? So, they reacted to my video. So, let's check this out while playing Fortnite. Wait. Yeah. Let's check it out. So, for you... Wait, hold up. For you guys who don't know what NotebookLM is, NotebookLM is this kind of AI that reacts to articles, videos, links, and shit. So let's check it out, bro. Let's check it out. What is that? Hold up.
All right, so have you ever like stumbled across something online? You know, something a little out there, not like mainstream
What do you mean out
news
there?
or anything, but
Out
it
there?
still gets you thinking about some interesting stuff.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
I mean, think about all the stuff that flies around online, especially these days. It's like a whole other world of information and takes on things.
Right, and that's kind of what we're looking at today. You guys sent in this YouTube video from a channel called
I sent it.
Fistmanji.
Fistman, you guys.
Yeah,
It's
and,
GG, bro.
It's about Chris Brown, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Breezy,
Chris
my
Brown.
man.
It's a pretty like raw
Breezy,
take,
bro.
I guess you could say, and all this recent buzz about him, specifically like a potential lawsuit against Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers, wow.
Yeah.
Ah,
And it
that-
also
that-
briefly
that
touches
video.
on some legal stuff involving Drake, too.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we've got like
I stand
legal
with
battles
Drake.
brewing potentially, and we're going right to the source, huh? A YouTube video. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, looking at sources like this, I don't know, it just feels like you get a much more unfiltered perspective, you know?
Well, absolutely.
Unfiltered,
And I think
that's-
what makes
that's
it so
good, that's good,
fascinating for us
that's
to kind of
good.
dive into this stuff. It's like
Yeah.
you're tapping into these conversations that are happening in real time. You know, like these online community, they have their own ways of processing information and forming opinions.
Totally.
Even if it hasn't like gone through all the official channels and been all like verified and stuff,
Yep.
it
Not
still
the
shows
mainstream,
us
bro.
what narratives are taking hold and shaping how people see things.
Exactly. And that's what I'm hoping we can do today, you know? Not treat this video as like the absolute truth or anything, but just really break
Don't
it
treat
down,
this video
see
as
what
the
the
absolute
YouTuber's saying
truth
about
or
Chris
anything.
Brown, and I don't know, see what kind of context it gives us, you know what I mean?
Context,
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
It's like we're sifting through this online discussion, picking out the nuggets of information, the
Okay.
claims, and trying to understand the perspective that's being presented,
Yeah.
like a little digital archaeology expedition.
Uh-huh. I like that. Okay, so getting into it, the first thing this YouTuber brings up is this whole idea that Chris Brown is suing Warner Brothers, or as they put it, Warner BR or whatever.
So we're starting off with a bang. A potential
Yeah,
lawsuit,
it's
huh?
brass.
That's juicy. But right off the bat, it's
Let's
important
do-
to point out
put
the
it
video
down
doesn't
for
really
a
give
bit.
us anything specific about this alleged lawsuit. No details about what it might be about, you know,
this too.
legally speaking, where the case might be at, or even like solid confirmation that it's actually happening. It's presented as like a fact, but, you know, it's an unverified claim at this point.
Yep,
Yeah,
Google
that's
does
fair.
that all
Then
the
they
time.
kind of jump over to Drake
Ah,
for a
Notebook
sec,
LM is
mentioning
Google,
a lawsuit
bro.
there as well.
I
At
think.
first, they thought
Yeah, it
Drake
is.
was suing Kendrick Lamar,
Oh, wow.
but then they correct themselves, saying it's actually Universal Music Group, UMG.
Okay, UMG.
Themselves,
Got it.
I'm like
so we're
myself,
dealing
bro.
with
Like,
some
it's not a
music
group,
industry
bro.
legal drama potentially. That's always interesting.
Right. But just like with the Chris Brown thing, there are no specifics about this Drake UMG lawsuit either. We don't know what it's about, what the issues are, or
Okay,
even
so I'm
where it
supposed to give
stands
links or
legally.
something?
Right, right. It's more of a mention than anything else.
Yeah.
A teaser almost.
Yeah.
you know. And actually, that's exactly what the YouTuber says they're going to do. They plan to do a whole separate video on the Drake situation.
Forgot to
Deeper
do that,
dive.
didn't I?
So for our
I forgot.
purposes,
I forgot.
today
I forgot.
with Chris Brown, it seems like it's more of a quick comparison point in the YouTuber's overall discussion.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so moving away from the legal stuff for a bit, the YouTuber spends a good chunk of time talking about their view of Chris
Oh,
Brown's
these
public
motherfuckers.
image. It's like they see him as this guy who's not afraid
Nope,
of,
nope, nope, nope,
I don't know,
nope,
getting
nope,
into
nope.
it with people.
Okay.
Yeah, engaging in conflict, not shying away from confrontation. It's an interesting take, right? Because it feeds into how we understand his reactions to certain situations.
Motherfucker.
Even bring up some examples.
Oh,
right,
come on,
to illustrate
100.
this point. Like they mention what they
Bro, this
see
is
as
the
a
worst.
strong reaction from Chris
Bro.
Brown to
Damn
comments made by a singer they call Zara Lawson. Pretty sure they're talking about Zara Larson.
Carl Larson, yeah.
And the YouTuber's
Yeah, I
take
like
is
them
that Chris
both.
Brown went hot and didn't take the L. Basically
Didn't take
meaning
the L,
he didn't
man.
back down, didn't accept
takes the
defeat,
L,
however
man?
you want to interpret that in whatever this disagreement
I don't
was.
even think that.
Right.
It's like they're painting a picture of him as someone who's willing to stand his ground and clap back. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they also mentioned that past beef with Quavo, suggesting Chris Brown went hard in that
Quavo.
situation as well. So yeah, it's
No
like
beef
they're
with
building
Quavo.
this image of him as someone who's not going to just sit back and ignore things, you know? He's going to engage, maybe even instigate sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not just about reacting, it's about actively shaping the narrative, controlling the conversation, you could say.
Huh.
Which I think really sets the stage for how they interpret the rest of the claims about the documentary and the potential lawsuit. It kind of makes sense in their mind why he might go the legal route and hit back with a diss track, right? If that's how he operates.
He better
Totally.
He better do it with a diss
And that
track.
actually brings us to what seems like the main point of this whole video. It's this claim that there's a new anti-breezy documentary out there, and that this
Which
is
is
what's
true,
supposedly
true.
behind Chris Brown's alleged lawsuit.
The documentary, right.
It's true,
Now,
it's
this
true.
is where things get a little fuzzy. Because the YouTuber doesn't give us any specifics about this documentary at all. No title,
again.
no details about what's in it, who made it, or
Bruh.
even where to find it.
I'm not
so
CNN,
it's really
bruh.
hard to say if this anti-breezy documentary even exists in the way they're describing it, you know?
It does
Yeah,
exist.
for sure.
It does
But they do
exist.
go on to
It's
speculate
all over the
that
news.
Chris Brown might respond to this documentary with a diss track, which, I mean, considering how they've portrayed him so far, kind of makes sense.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. It fits right into that narrative. Right?
Yeah.
They're drawing on this whole culture of like rap beefs and retaliatory responses, which, let's be real, is a thing. It's like their way of trying to predict how Chris Brown might react based on the image they've created of him.
Okay, so then the YouTuber zooms out a bit and starts talking about documentaries in general and what they
Did I?
see as this trend of politically correct people using documentaries to bring up past events and cancel people.
Was I
and they
saying-
specifically
talking about
link
documentary?
this idea to this supposed anti-breezy documentary.
Right. So we're getting
Okay,
into the
I don't
whole
know if it
cancel
was
culture
documentary.
discussion now, which is always interesting, right?
I don't know.
Because it touches on a lot of sensitive issues. Basically, they're skeptical. The YouTuber is skeptical, I mean. They're skeptical about any new allegations and also about the timing of this documentary. Like, why now?
Yeah.
They even point out that, from what they can tell, Chris Brown hasn't been involved in any violent incidents for a while. They say, it sure seems that way, which kind of implies that they think there might be ulterior motives behind this documentary, you know?
Right,
course.
and they really drive that point home with this analogy of a witch hunt.
Yeah.
Basically, they're suggesting that this documentary and all the attention it might
And
bring is
Afghans,
less
yeah.
about seeking justice or whatever, and more about unfairly targeting Chris Brown based on stuff he's done in the past.
And
Not exactly, but
you know, they do acknowledge that he's done things wrong. They're not denying that. They're just questioning why these events keep getting brought up, especially if, you know, there aren't any new
go
allegations.
to the main
It's
part.
an interesting perspective because
That's
it
not
touches
the
on
main
this whole
part, bro.
question of how we deal with people's past mistakes
What?
as a society, right? To
No,
what
that's-
extent
that's
can
not what
people
I'm
move on?
saying.
Can they
That's
ever
not-
truly be redeemed?
Yeah.
It seems like the YouTuber's leaning towards the idea that, you know, at some point it becomes more about punishment
Yeah.
and about
It's about
growth and moving
speech.
forward, which is a
It's
valid
about
point
lyrics.
to consider, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So then they shift gears again and start talking about media agendas. And they seem to believe that when media outlets focus on people like Chris Brown, there are usually other motives at play beyond just reporting the news.
They're saying
course.
that the media doesn't always just present things in a straightforward way. You know, like
Yeah.
there can be these hidden agendas or goals that influence what gets covered and how.
Yes, of
When it
course.
comes to this Chris Brown documentary, they even speculate about what those agendas might be. They mention a possible feminist reason, though they admit they don't know for sure what the specific motivation is.
Right, and it's interesting because they argue that while Chris Brown's past violent acts are often brought up, the media's real issue with him might actually be his explicit lyrics.
Now,
Yeah,
that's a thought-provoking point.
Right, it makes you think about how
Thought-provoking.
different types of controversial content and behavior are received by the media and the public. They even bring up Eminem as a comparison point, suggesting that Eminem faced a lot of backlash and protests, mainly because of his lyrics, even though, in their opinion, he wasn't a particularly violent person. So they're kind of highlighting this possible double standard, or at least a difference in how certain issues are perceived and addressed.
Yeah, that comparison with Eminem is really
Oh,
interesting.
shit.
Because it highlights how complex these conversations about art and controversy and public image can be. It's not always black and white. The YouTuber suggesting that maybe the criticism aimed at Chris Brown is multi-layered. Like maybe his past violence provides a more socially acceptable reason to scrutinize him, while his explicit
Exactly
content
what
might
I'm
be a
saying.
less openly discussed but still significant issue for some media outlets. It makes you think about the unspoken rules and biases that might be shaping these narratives.
Yeah, it definitely does. Okay, so then the whole discussion takes a pretty unexpected turn when they start talking about Chris Brown's stance on certain, like, social and political issues.
Here we go.
Right. They claim that Chris Brown is not woke and not a feminist, which, in their
Bang.
opinion,
I
puts
think-
him at
I think
odds
so.
with, and I quote, the establishment, the deep state, and the WM.
So we're getting into some pretty
Do they
loaded
use deep
territory
state?
here. The use of terms like deep state
Ah,
and
they-
WM
of course they're
suggests
going to
that the
talk about
YouTuber
that.
is tapping into some conspiratorial thinking, which
Con-
honestly is not uncommon in certain online communities. It's
What?
like they see a connection between Chris Brown's perceived political views and the negative attention he receives, suggesting it might be coming from these powerful, shadowy forces.
Of
Yeah,
course.
and maybe the most
I do believe
surprising
that.
claim of all is that they say Chris Brown
Ooh,
stands
should I
with
take-
Palestine
actually,
and
I take
hasn't
this,
supported Israel. They even bring up a clip where Chris Brown
That's the main
supposedly talks
part.
about
That's the main
genocide,
part.
which the YouTuber interprets as being about Israel. But I gotta say, they don't provide any direct quotes or like actual evidence to back this claim up.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point for listeners to keep in mind. This interpretation seems to be solely based on the YouTuber's understanding of how Chris Brown used the word genocide in this.
How else
unnamed
can you
video
use the
clip.
word?
It really highlights how easy it is to jump to conclusions
Recently,
and make
and you say
interpretations
that, and
without any
how
solid
other
evidence,
way can you
especially when we're talking about these
take it?
highly sensitive and controversial geopolitical issues. It's a
Oh, yeah.
reminder
It's
to be
sensitive, but
cautious about accepting claims at face
not a
value,
two-sided
no matter
issue.
how passionately they're presented.
Okay, so to sum it all up, this deep dive into Fistmang's video has uncovered a whole
Fistmang?
bunch of
That's Fist-
interesting
okay, it's
claims and
Fistman,
opinions.
GG,
Right?
bro.
We've got the alleged lawsuit against Warner Brothers, the comparison to the Drake UMG legal situation, the YouTuber's whole
Discuss.
take on Chris Brown as someone who's all about confrontation and going hard, the claim about this new anti-Breezy documentary, and then their perspectives on
Oopsie.
documentaries and cancel culture and media agendas and Chris Brown's supposed political leanings, especially regarding Palestine.
That's a lot to unpack.
Right. But it's important to remember that a lot of what we've discussed today is coming directly from the YouTuber's interpretation, which might not necessarily reflect reality. It's all unverified, unconfirmed, and often based on speculation. So, while it's given us a fascinating glimpse into how some people are perceiving this whole Chris Brown situation, it's information that should be taken with a grain of salt, you know? It's a starting point for further investigation, not the final word.
Absolutely, and I think it really highlights the challenges of navigating the online information landscape, right?
yeah.
Where information comes from so many different sources,
Okay.
and the line between fact and opinion can be blurry. It's on us as consumers
trying
of
to
this
discredit my-
information to be discerning
Bro.
and critical, to think about the claims being made, the evidence being presented, and the potential biases that might be influencing.
How
the
long are you
narrative.
going to talk about that?
Like, you've heard the YouTubers' take on things, their views on media motives and the way past actions can impact someone's present, and their understanding of Chris Brown's public persona. But it's just one perspective among many.
Right, and I think that brings
Okay.
us to a really crucial question for you, the listener, to consider. In this age of information overload, where so much of what we encounter online is unverified or based on opinion, how do you effectively sift through it all and figure out what's real and what might be motivated by something else entirely? It's a challenge we all face.
Oh, that's what you're talking
and it
about.
requires a critical mindset, a willingness to question assumptions, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So yeah, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, folks. Keep those brains engaged and those critical thinking skills sharp.
Hate these
And keep sending us
crafters.
those interesting
Uh-oh.
finds from the corners of the internet. You never know what we'll uncover next.
See you next time.
Uh-oh. Ah, damn.